What's happening, Hardscapers? Today we're doing a partial lift and relay of a driveway. Let's get into this. Now, this is a project I actually wasn't going to make a video on, so we actually don't even show you the filming of lifting the pavers and stacking them aside, but we get started right after that in scraping up the used concrete sand and replacing it with new concrete sand in some piles, and we just walk through all the different things that we encountered on this project. Problems with lifting and relaying partial projects, especially something like a driveway that goes into a front walkway, has multiple slopes that go into it, and just how you're gonna align everything using string lines to make sure you're at the right elevation, and all you need to know about a partial lift and relay, especially for a driveway. Let's get into this. So here we're only replacing a small portion of this project. I don't do this anymore, but it's for a previous client, and obviously this driveway is about 15 to 20 years old. The pavers are still in really good condition minus the exposed aggregate coming out, but there were some ruts coming in and out of this garage, and then along the foundation there, they were all sinking. So you can really see how much these have sunk along here. This isn't the driveway, obviously we've already lifted those, but this just gives you an example of how much this area has really sunk down. Water pools, that creates a problem for this. We want to lift these up to the top of the curb here. So we've lifted up this portion, and now the trick is trying to get it to match the existing interlock. So what we do here is we set up some string lines from the top of garage to the bottom of pavers there. So that string line follows along, and that's going to be top of paver. So now what we can do is we can set our screed bars along this base, and the screed, knowing that that is top of paver, so we need to be 2 3/8 of an inch below that string line will be our top of screed bars. And we'll screed this out, and that'll give us a nice level from this side where these pavers are and working our way across. So we'll start our screed bar right here, second screed bar below that string line, third screed bar below that string line, and then we'll move our string lines once we screeded and just get a nice level area that will match along this driveway and all the way down to these pavers as best as possible. So now we've screeded, we got a nice clean bedding layer to work with. We just have to fill in our areas where the screed pipes were. This will require some work just along the edges, just to make sure we're nice and level with the previous layer of stone. So you can see we've actually laid some here. And we just have to come around with a mallet and just either knock this one down or knock this one down that we just laid. This was existing, just to make sure that that lip is consistent as possible, especially considering the driveway is not necessarily 100% level throughout this. We're just getting the major areas, which is why we're just doing a single area of this driveway as opposed to the whole thing, because the rest of it isn't too bad. It's just this area here that it's the worst, where it was rutted and sinking at the driveway edge. Now here's the problem with lifting and relay just a portion of a project. If you lift and relay the whole thing, you can basically create your own slopes, and you're not going to mix and match with other slopes. So here's where the problem lies. I can't get these two pieces in, because essentially what we've done here is you can see that the level going across, we've actually lifted this, and it actually has to be lifted a little bit more in that area, but this had actually sloped down like this, and now we're making it straight. And when you do that, you actually have more surface area when it slopes up and down, but less surface area when it's a complete straight path across. So you lose some space in between your pavers. So everything has to be butted up nice and tight, closer and closer, to be able to squeeze these pieces in. Those were a little bit difficult. It's getting more and more harder here. And we experience that throughout this project as we get closer to this top layer. And that's the problem with lifting and relaying just a portion of a project, because you're going to run into these scenarios, and that's why we try to do an entire project. In this case we didn't, and that's the problem that we're having right now. Now if this was caused by traffic and by the pavers actually sinking, we would notice that along the border stones that they had pushed out. These stones had not pushed out. We don't see that. And if that's the case, we've actually made more room for the pavers to actually come inwards. That edge restraint has held up though, even though it is heaving out of the ground, but that would give us a little bit more room to be able to play with in terms of everything pushing down and pushing out. And we lift those, we can actually get them to fit nicely. But since this little slope here is a part of the original screeding, a part of the original leveling of this material, we just aren't able to accomplish that as well. Here's another thing you're gonna notice with lift and relays is that you don't know what the pavers look like underneath. On top, these look like they're in good shape, but once you start lifting them, you could run into scenarios where you've got efflorescence problems, which means there's a drainage problem underneath. That's not a big deal, but it is a bigger deal when that same problem starts to erode and break down and disintegrate the bottom of the pavers. Sometimes you'll lift up a paver and it'll be almost falling apart, and then you can't relay that one to be able to get a smooth surface throughout. This one's not bad, we can go ahead and do that. But you will get some pavers where they're just disintegrating at the bottom and they won't be the same thickness or have the same structural integrity to be able to relay them. So that's another problem with lift and relays. You don't know what the bottoms look like, so we let our clients know that that could be an issue. And running into that issue, what you might do is just extend the border. So we would make the border thicker with new material, and that would free up some of these pavers to be able to use where these ones have broken down. So that's a solution to that problem, and then they get a essentially new border. That would be a change order that would be charged for that. Just something you might want to let your clients know about with lift and relays. So this is what we do whenever we have cuts along our lift and relay. We line them up exactly because we know the pattern. Pattern is nice and easy, but it's these cut pieces that we don't want to mix and match, get them out of order. So we find an area that's out of the way for the client, put them aside so that now when we're putting them back, we know exactly which way they are going. Right here's another problem with lift and relays. This cut wasn't done by me, and it also may have been manipulated with the way I laid, depending on my slope and how that matched up with the previous slope, but that's a problem. And there's two options we can do with this. We can shimmy our stones down a little bit. With this pattern, it doesn't really work that well to be able to do that to get a nice straight line. Other option is to take my saw and create a nice straight line on this, and then to run our pavers down here with this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to shimmy a little bit, see if I can get my pavers in and get a nice straight line with this. If not, I'll run my saw along this line, make a nice score and make a nice straight line with this and clean it up. We did get everything to squeeze in here. We did have to shove the rest of our pavers back to get a nice straight line on this. It worked out. We got it just in enough and it looks much better than it did before, and we are off to the races here. And that is our project there. We're nice and flush, about a 1/16 of an inch higher than the driveway floor, just in case there's a little bit of settling. We've got our polymeric sand installed, and this is back to as good as we could possibly expect, being that we're tying in a lot of different slopes coming from the front walkway down to the end of the driveway here, and the driveway actually slopes once it gets to the end of the road as well. So lots of different slopes happening here, and since we didn't pick up the entire thing, we're screeding from an existing slope to an existing slope to the garage floor. We just try to tie it in as best as possible, and we let our clients know what to expect from it, that it's not going to be the 100% perfect, but those areas that they're pooling water and ice in the wintertime, we're going to get rid of those for them. If you have any questions about this video, leave them in the comment section below. Like this video if you found it helpful for whatever reason, and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content like this. Thank you so much for watching.